guys, welcome back to Nightowl podcast. So tonight I have a very special guest on, Graham Hood. And I actually found Graham through watching his video that went viral. And I'll let him introduce himself. Take it away, Graham.
Yeah, hi Rosita. Yeah, I'm Graham Hood. I used to be a captain with Qantas, a pilot for 53 years and 32 years in command at Qantas. Very senior there, and I ended my career in objection to the vaccine mandates that they were bringing down and the stress it was putting on people. And so I made a stand. I made a video which went viral all around the world on several million views on various platforms, and I haven't stopped speaking since.
Yeah, and we're very thankful that you haven't, because I as I understand it, I'm included in this obviously, but a lot of people are struggling right now. And today we had a court case. Not a court case, but a ruling for a very large court case against the vaccine mandates, and that the judge dismissed it. So a lot of people, I was on Twitter when this happened, a lot of people were very upset. They were just like saying that Australia has fallen, and like I kind of felt it as well. But then I listened to one of the solicitors. His name is Tony, and he's actually hopeful. He's actually saying that this is a sort of good thing, because now he can realize where they need to take it next, and it's just gathering of information for the next court case that they want to fight these mandates for. So
yeah, Tony Mikulic's a very, very good lawyer. He's very energetic, and I don't think they were hopeful that they were going to win. It was a probing exercise. The next big one, I think, will be the one with paramedic John Larter on the 4th of November, and that's being fought from a totally different perspective. So the game's not over yet by a long way. So people should keep their hope up, and keep their chins up, because we're in this fight for as long as it takes and see where we go from there. But we mustn't give up, we mustn't be disheartened, because the side effects of that is that people cave in and they end up getting something that they may well end up regretting. I mean, I'm no doctor, but if you're convicted that you shouldn't have this, if you have to break with that for reasons of, paying your mortgage or putting food on the table, if you do that too early before the fight's over, you may regret it. So if that's your conviction and you need to hang in there, please hang in there and know that you're not alone. There are millions of you in Australia. Now, we've got to remember that more than 20% of the population haven't even considered being vaccinated, and that's about 7 million people. So, we've just got to keep our chins up.
Yeah, and I wonder, out of all the people that have been vaccinated, how many of them were actually forced in a way?
Well, I think the people who were vaccinated very early were ready to get it, and for their own reasons.
Yep.
And they obviously trusted the mainstream narrative, and they were trusting the government and the health authorities. I myself had fallen into that trap. I trusted the government. I gave permission for my mum to get vaccinated in the nursing home, and I had decided not to get AstraZeneca. I was going to go for the Pfizer. And after I told my boss I'd get Pfizer and tried to arrange a time to have that happen, I thought I'd better look into it. I'm so glad I did, because I believe in informed consent, and I haven't been given the information that gets me anywhere close to that.
Yeah.
So there were people who jumped early because they just wanted over and done with, and then there are a whole bunch of people who are a little bit reticent. And now you've got the vast majority who are coming forward now who've left it till the 11th hour because they're not happy and they're coerced and their spirit's broken. And when that happens to a country that loses its spirit dies as a nation, and its democracy dies, and we mustn't let that happen. We have to fight for freedoms that our fathers and grandfathers fought for in the wars, and we can't denigrate their sacrifice by caving in as much as we have. So I think there's a lot of hope for us yet. And even if it fails, we have to stand in our own conscience, and life still goes on. People adapt and they survive. This has been history from the Garden of Eden. This is how it's been. So life's full of trials, and we just have to take one at a time. I've been around for 68 years, and I've had my share of near-death experiences and trials in my life, and major upheavals. And everything I go through makes me stronger and gives me more character and develops my character. So, there's a prayer called the Serenity Prayer, where it talks about accepting hardship as a pathway to peace. So I think that's the frame that I've been in for a long time, and it's served me well, in my faith as well.
Yeah. Did you want to share some of the hardships that you've gone through in your life?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. My mum and dad were great. I love them, but they went through the trials of growing up in the Great Depression and World War II. My mum had a couple of addictions which weren't healthy, and my dad was a workaholic. My brother left home. He was 12 years older than me. He left home as soon as he could, and I felt fairly responsible for my family's happiness. I became a massive codependent at the age of 5, and I thought that if my mum and dad broke up, I'd end up going to an orphanage or a reform school or something like that. And so I fought really hard to keep my mum and dad together from that age. We lived in a caravan in the bush in the Sutherland Shire when I was a kid. I got rheumatic fever. From that, I was unable to go to school for 6 months, and I spent 6 months sleeping in the caravan while mum and dad went to work. And I found some magazines and struggled with a pornography addiction. And I never actually went back to school much. I stopped going to school when I was 13. I had a juvenile criminal record by the time I was 17. I lived in a marriage for 34 years, which brought 2 beautiful children forward, but we were 2 people who should never have been together. And I struggled with a whole lot of addictions myself in that process. And in 2006, I was going to end my own life because I'd completely lost my identity. Industrially, work-wise, I've been through a number of heavy industrial disputes. One in 1989 that looked like I was going to lose my career, and I was unemployed for 6 months. And my new wife, Michelle, and I have been together for 15 years. She's an amazing lady, and she nearly died just before we were married. She had a couple of bad head bleeds, and we thought she was going to die. And we've had a lot of legal battles. So we've had a lot of trials. We've had, in the last 15 years, probably 60 major life-changing events in our life. We've had one of our grandchildren died of SIDS at age 3 weeks. And a couple of years after that, his father was murdered in a random home invasion in Perth. And our daughter, my stepdaughter, was brutally bashed and nearly killed at the same time. So we've had a lot of upheaval, but we're strong and we're deep in our faith, and we really love God, and we love the sacrifices that have been made for us. And every day is a good day, and I'm a very happy and happily well-adjusted human being now, and I'm really grateful to God for that.
That's a beautiful message. Gosh, you've been through so much, and I'm sorry for all of all the hardships that you faced. I couldn't even compare, but I think that your life is the beautiful example for these kind of times. I think that we can overcome it. If you feel comfortable, did you want to talk more about your the time you were going to commit suicide? Or
yeah, sure. I've spoken about this in front of large audiences and television programs and things like that, so I'm quite comfortable talking about it. When you grow up in dysfunctional families and you struggle to feel like you belong, and quite often you feel rejected and unloved, And when you have feelings of being rejected and unloved, you turn to addiction to mask the pain of that feeling. It's a disconnection from society. So all addictions are a means of masking a pain of not being loved or feeling rejected. So that was my case, and I think that's true for so many people now. So with my pornography addiction at the age of 12, I always felt like there was something wrong with me, and that I would never be accepted, or I would always be, some kind of sexual deviant. And I grew up with that subconscious bottom line belief of who I might become, and so I lived my life in a cloud, and there was a big aching hole in my soul, like a God-shaped hole that I tried to fill with pornography and other things, and it didn't work. And it wasn't until I put God in there that it actually fitted, and I felt like I belonged. And so I was losing my identity with the pornography addiction for many years. It had a real hold on me. If it would be nothing for me to spend 8 hours a day watching pornography if I had a day off and I was alone. And of course, my job meant spending a lot of time alone. You'd be in hotel rooms around the country, just sitting there with nothing much to do, and you'd open a computer, and it was a really dark place. And you get to a stage of self-loathing that you just feel that the whole world would be better off without you. So I set a date to end my life, and it was a particular anniversary date in 2006. And as I was getting closer to that date, I was actually looking forward to it. I had it set up so that it looked like an accident, and the insurance company would pay out and my family wouldn't be struggling. And my kids had grown up by that stage. And it was just days before that date that I was to do my last flight across to Perth and back. And it was on that flight that during a visit to the toilet during the flight, I ran into a lady who is now my wife, and us meeting turned my whole life around, and I realised that my life really did have a purpose, and we've been working together ever since, and we've healed each other. She was a victim of childhood sexual abuse for many years, being groomed and raped every weekend as a little child for 6 years, and she put up with that and survived that, and she's an amazing human being, and we've been really good for each other, and we feel that God put us together for a purpose. So we've been working in welfare ever since. We run 12-step recovery programs for addicts. She does a lot of work with the adult victims of childhood sexual abuse, and I work in welfare with guys who are struggling with suicidal tendencies and porn addiction, and so it's all turned out to be a really good thing. And the last 15 years of my life wouldn't have happened if God hadn't stepped in. And I was an atheist back then. I didn't believe in anything. And it was when I met Michelle that I realised that there must be a higher power that's guiding and leading me. And I turned to Christ, and my life hasn't looked back from then. But I realised that there's this battle of good and evil that goes on, that has gone on for thousands of years, and we're all capable of the most incredible evil if we succumb to it. So we need to choose every day whether we're going to live in the light or live in the dark. And quite often we make choices without even thinking about it that keep us in the dark. And that's what happens when you get to a point where you want to end your life. And that's where I was. And now I live in the light, and I don't contemplate things like that anymore, which is really good. And I'm able to help others who are.
Yeah. So with that being said, it seems like there are a lot of, not a lot, but there, it exists in Australia, that there are people that have bought into this whole COVID hysteria, and now they're really hating on the people who are not vaccinated, or they blame the unvaccinated. And why do you think, as a nation, we've gotten to that point? I've seen so many, not so many, but I have seen nasty comments made to people who protested, or to people who didn't want to get the jab. Do you think it's because of our lack to anything spiritual, or?
Absolutely. I the more we take God out of our society, the the worse, the darker it gets. And we've seen churches decimated by the cover-ups of childhood sexual abuse, and that's brought a lot of faiths undone. We've progressively seen our society take God out of it. We see minority groups standing up and protesting in ways for different things that actually remove God out of everything. So people who actually have a deep faith now are looked on with suspicion, which is a shame, because I think religion has a lot to answer to for that. Corporate religion has a lot to answer to. I'm not a big fan of corporatized religion, but I love God. And corporatized religion tends to paint a picture of God that as an overbearing tyrant who's wandering around with a clipboard, writing down everybody's sins so that they can be punished later. But when you realise that God is the epitome of love, and Jesus came to earth to demonstrate that in his actions, and as a human being, he was absolutely amazing. So, for us, it's understanding that faith has a large part in community, and even our laws are all based on the 10 Commandments. So the first 4 of those are about honouring God, which takes you out of thinking about yourself all the time. And the other 6 are about honouring and loving your neighbour as you love yourself. So I love God, but I'm not a big fan of corporate religion. And I think when we take faith out of society, we really are putting ourselves at risk. And you've got to remember too, we're a nation that's become bloated on entitlement. We're not risk averse. We don't like to take risks. We're legislated to oblivion. We're governed to death by governments who just refuse to accept any kind of risk. If they had their own way, we'd all be driving around at 20 kilometres an hour with speed cameras on every corner. And we have intoxicated ourselves on this entitlement that we tend to be addicted to convenience, and our immune systems are struggling because of the garbage we eat and the way that we live, and our spirits and our minds are intoxicated by mainstream media with reality television that's anything but real. It's all about people under pressure, and I think we've become a very sick society as a result of our addictions, and that plays out when something comes along like this. We just don't seem to have any strength or any ticker. And we've got to remember that what we're seeing now, as far as people being persecuted is concerned, the people of Germany back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, they were starved into oblivion. They were a well-educated race of people, and Adolf Hitler came along and gave them some hope for their future. And about 80% of them were happy to see 6 million Jews bundled up and sent off somewhere out of sight, out of mind, without even caring about where they went. And it wasn't until the war ended that they realised that they were all murdered, and it happened on their watch. And we're no different. We're capable of that in this country. We're almost there. I mean, if this doesn't get arrested in the next year, Australia will be on the edge of a segregated apartheid that will make South Africa and Nazi Germany look pale into significance if we're not careful. So we have to realise that we're capable of that, and we need to stand together. And we need to rebuild a circle of love and trust and compassion, regardless of people's choices, and become the nation that we once were, again, by rebuilding the spirit of Australia.
Yeah, but if you say this to people who aren't really paying attention to politics or anything like that, it's just, they think you're, they label, even the mainstream media labels people not buying into the narrative, conspiracy theorists, right wing, all of these labels that are societally hated for some reason. And I think I've been spending a lot of time just thinking about how we even got here. And I think that there's been a bit of a brainwashing happening for a couple of decades now.
Yeah, there has.
And as a refugee, I saw it a little bit better, but I kind of fell for it at one point as well. When I was at university, my last year before I decided to resign, not resign, but decided to quit university or whatever, they were like trying to force this narrative onto me that I, as a Middle Eastern woman, don't have the same opportunities as a white person. And it's just, it's the most ridiculous thing to hear. And it's kind of offensive because my family came here to have a better life. So there's just there's a lot of communist style propaganda leadership coming, like, already implemented into society. And they're even trying to erase sex. Like just today, I'm gonna be canceled for saying this, but just today I pointed out that like biological women are the only ones who can give birth, and I got called a transphobe for that. So
Yeah.
just I have no idea what is happening to Western democracy anymore, or like Western nations. It's just and I've been watching a lot of Yuri Bezmenov. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's
No.
basically somebody who tried to warn the Western nation that they're trying to implement communism into like Western societies so that we have no more free nations.
Absolutely. Yeah, there is an agenda, and the agenda is not even hidden anymore. And people need to wake up to a realism of the conspiracies that are going on, not some kind of labeling that goes on with conspiracy theorists. I used to come down on people who had conspiracy theories, but if anyone had said to me 2 years ago that Australia would be having these conversations now with rubber bullets flying around the streets of Melbourne, I'd have said they were crazy, that they were conspiracy theorists. And I'm not of that belief anymore. I think anything's possible. And I think when you look calmly at what's happening, the brainwashing that's been going on, the agendas, the global agendas that are coming, like we haven't seen anything yet. This pandemic is nothing compared to the draconian measures that climate change will bring on us in the next year. And people who are running around high-fiving each other, you know, after being jabbed and thinking they're going to return to normal, they've got rocks in their heads. Normal is finished. There is no more normal. The only normal is every day will be different. And so while that does present a lot of challenges, it also presents a lot of opportunities for people to grow together in community. We have to stand together as though the whole country was on fire in a bushfire. That's what we do. But with this ridiculous arrangement we have now, we're set at odds with one another. I mean, the Melbourne Age today, I think, referred to people who don't get vaccinated as devious. I mean, that's just bizarre. That's crazy, because the people I'm talking to, and there are tens of thousands of them, are all highly educated, well-trained people who've completely given up their careers because they believe that this is the wrong thing to do. And yet mainstream Australia just looks at them like idiots. You know, nurses and doctors and frontline workers who were yesterday's heroes are now today's trash because they won't be vaccinated. I mean, this kind of mentality is sick, and people need to look at themselves in the mirror and ask themselves, you know, are they bigoted? Are they prejudiced? Do they feel okay about enjoying freedoms in a country where, you know, perhaps a third to a quarter of the country is segregated from the rest of society? That's not the Australia that I want to live in. And I think if we opened up the offshore detention centres and put leaky boats on the beaches there, that the detainees would get in the boats and go back to where they came from. There's nothing to attract them to Australia anymore, because quite honestly, we have become an ugly people. We point our finger at other countries for their abuses of human rights, and yet our own Prime Minister doesn't have the courage to point to Victoria and tell them to pull their head in and stop doing what they're doing. So we have no moral authority to point the finger at any other nation over human rights abuses anymore. And we as Australians allow this to happen. And we have to answer for that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just, it's still like, it blows my mind how, like, where we're at 2 years into this scamdemic. I can't even call it a pandemic anymore. It's the scam is so obvious.
Yeah, it's obvious to those who aren't in denial. A lot of people who aren't interested in hearing any of these conversations, like we won't be being watched tonight by anybody who doesn't agree with us, pretty much, because they don't come looking for that. But if you imagine if you'd just fallen for the mainstream narrative and had both vaccinations, and you delve into the other side, where you hear that, you know, there's a high possibility you'd be maimed or even dead within the next 3 to 5 years because of it, you would want to go into denial and not even want to hear that side of the story. And that's where a lot of people are finding themselves. I think they want to think that everyone who's concerned about this is crazy. Because if they're not crazy and they're right, it means that they've done something that may well cost them their lives. So it's a very hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. And we have to love them where they're at, and we have to accept the fact that some of them may have made a hasty decision that they will regret later. And sadly, on this side of the fence too, there are a lot of people hoping that will happen. I hope that my fears are proven wrong, because if my fears are proven right, then a lot of people I love and care about, including family, will die.
Yeah.
And I would rather be wrong and not have that happen. Believe me, I'm not, you know, and we hang up COVID deaths on a trophy wall, like, you know, this disease is killing people. Oh, that person died of 93 years old of emphysema, but they had COVID. So we'll claim them as a COVID death. And we're claiming trophies. And then on the other side, we have people claiming every death of someone who's been vaccinated as a side effect. And we've got to stop doing that. We've just got to live in the reality of what's going on, that the big pandemic we're living in is fear. And the antidote for that fear, the vaccination for fear, is hope. And we have to start living in the hope. And we've got to remember that the fear virus has many variants. It has the suicide variant. It has the domestic violence variant. It has the collapsed business and broken family variant, the divorce variant. It has the mental illness variant, the addiction variant. And all of these are claiming many, many lives, far greater than COVID ever has. And we're not even talking about that, and we're not having that conversation. And that's what I'm about. I want this country to have a new conversation.
Yeah.
It's vitally important. Otherwise, we're just doomed to go down a pathway that so many other nations in history have gone down.
Yeah, and that Carrie Chant is already talking about booster shots, and it hasn't even, like, the new variant hasn't even arrived yet. Or
yeah, well, that's it. The new variant hasn't arrived yet because they're not ready to deliver it.
It's amazing how planned everything is, huh?
Well, you know, a lot of people are saying you don't trust the science. Well, I believe that the science created the virus in a lab. So, you know, why should I trust science? I want to trust the actual science, not the make-believe stuff. And even mainstream media is starting to say that this virus was brewed in a lab. We know that it was patented in the UK in, I think, 2006 or 2008. That it was played around with in Fort Detrick in America, in the Army Biological Weapons Testing Center. That it was also then shipped over to Wuhan in China, where Anthony Fauci was funding gain of function research. So this is sinister to the extreme, and this is not underground conspiracy theory. This is investigated fact. But the world doesn't want to hear that, because if we hear that, then we're in denial, because denial means don't even know I am lying. And that's where most of the world sits, where this vaccine's concerned.
Yeah, I know that I've tried to talk to my family about it. They call me crazy. They call it all conspiracy theory, even though you go onto World Economic Forum, they plan out the lockdowns.
Yeah. It's all there in plain sight, you know.
Exactly.
It's crazy. You know, they've even got 5G mentioned in the COVID-19 plan.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's all there. It's sinister in the extreme, and it's not even hidden anymore. They don't have to hide it because it's so outrageous. Most people don't believe it.
I mean, imagine if people actually believed it, what would happen? Like, I think everyone would start rioting or something.
Well, if this goes down the way it may well do, like let's for example say that PCR tests were banned and they brought in rapid antigen testing, which they're maybe about to do, but they're not bringing in rapid antigen testing until the majority of people are vaccinated. So if we had rapid antigen testing going instead of PCR tests at the beginning, the numbers would have been way down, because PCR tests are in better than 90% giving false positives. And the rapid antigen tests are very accurate, and you get a result in 3 minutes. We wouldn't have had a pandemic if we had rapid antigen testing. I'm convinced of that. It wouldn't have been a pandemic. So now if we bring it in now, after most of the people have been vaccinated, when the results from the rapid antigen tests show that there's not many cases, they'll then say, oh, that's because we vaccinated everybody. You know what I mean? So there's, and then it'll be the unvaccinated people's fault when the next variant comes down the line. And they've already talked about the next big pandemic. They've even called it Marburg. Now, when I made my rant on video, I mentioned that. I mentioned Marburg's coming, and the fact checkers fact-checked me into oblivion over that. But more and more today, we're hearing mainstream commentators in the World Health Organization talking about the next big thing we need to worry about is Marburg. Yes. So in other words, they've already got it lined up, ready to go. If this doesn't get everyone vaccinated, they'll now bring another one in that does. So I believe these things have been manufactured in order to get the population vaccinated for whatever reason. And you can do your own research in that.
Yeah, I mean, my least favorite theory is the depopulation theory. I just because I have loved ones who have gotten the vaccine, it's just very cringy and upsetting to hear. Like, you're telling me that my family might die within 3 to 5 years. It's just that's my least favorite. That's one of the theories I hate the most. But what do you think? What do you want to?
Yeah. I look. I'm not telling you your family's going to die in 3 to 5 years. It's what the narrative, some of the narrative is, and we've got to accept the fact that the main entity that's pushing global vaccination is also the main entity who believes that the only way the world will survive is to depopulate. So it's at odds that somebody who thinks we should depopulate then wants to vaccinate the world to save lives. I mean, if you want to depopulate, let viruses do their thing and kill people off. But if you do that, then if you're one of the people in control of the wealth, then you might get the virus and die too. So, and that same person who wants to depopulate and vaccinate the world is also the largest agricultural landholder in the world, who also controls most of the world's seed stock. So he will control who lives and who dies, and who gets vaccinated, and he will also control food. So he can control starvation. It's sinister in the extreme. It's like we have these multi-billionaires who are playing games. If we had a world government now under their ruling, Bill Gates would be the Minister for Agriculture and Health. Jeff Bezos would be the Commerce Minister. And you'd have that Elon Musk would be the Finance Minister, because he loves playing games with currency. I mean, it's just sinister. They're the people that are ruling the world. It's not the global politicians. They're just puppets to the whole thing. I mean, anybody can see that. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist. I mean, that's there for you to see. You've only got to see who pulls the strings in Australia. It's the corporations who are bringing in the mandates, not the government. Yeah. The corporations deciding to lock people out if they haven't been vaccinated, because the federal government doesn't have the power to do that constitutionally, but the corporations do, and that's where we're screwed up.
Yeah, and actually, this on Monday of this week, I went to a gathering with a couple of Aboriginal uncles and elders and sisters, and they were basically saying that they kind of want the land back to First Nation people.
Yeah.
they were telling us that this government is fictitious, and I have yet to upload the videos onto my YouTube channel, but do you know much about that at all, or?
Yeah, I'm learning a lot more about it. Back in the 1970s, the government virtually dismantled the constitution and became a pseudo-republic, even though the general population voted to remain a constitutional monarchy. They brought in a thing, I think it was called the Australia Act, and politicians are given an opportunity when they're sworn in to either swear allegiance to the Queen of England or the Queen of Australia. So they're two separate entities. We don't have a Queen of Australia. So there are some people delving into constitutional law and legal issues through freedom of information who've discovered that our constitution has actually been dismantled, and that most of the laws, in fact, all of the laws that have been made since then, since the 70s, are null and void. And this government has been operating illegally. Now that's going to come out. That's coming out in the near future. I think what the First Nations people are talking about ultimately has a lot of merit, because the land was stolen from them, and we have encroached on them for the last 230 years, and they have put up with us, and I want to thank them for their patience with us.
Yeah.
I think they are the traditional owners of the land, and they should be recognised as such. And I'm also hearing, I'm talking to the elders too, and they're saying that they have sovereignty over the land, which they had before the British came to colonise it, and that they have no desire to take people's homes or land off them. They want to have sovereignty, return the country to its natural splendour by ways of managing the environment in the ways that they've done it, and bringing in their form of government, walking hand in hand with us. And I think if we look at the way we've done it up till now, it's been an abject failure. Consumerism and multiculturalism and globalism have been an abject failure, and we need to do something different. And I think the traditional owners of this land, we can learn a lot from, those who we haven't corrupted with our own ideologies. So I think their claim is legitimate, and in a way, the way the country's going, I think we need to be pulled down a peg or two, and I'd like to see them achieve their ends.
Me too. Definitely me too. I'm definitely getting behind them. Which brings me to, they kind of want to get more power in politics and government. But my concern with that is what if, like a lot of people's concern is, what if the elections are rigged? What are your thoughts on elections?
Oh, wow. I watched what's gone on in America, and I thought, no, that wouldn't be possible. But you imagine now, let's imagine that the people who are not getting jabbed are going to be segregated and isolated. And let's say that's about 7 million Australians. Now, if we're not going to be able to go anywhere or do anything, when the next election is on, we're going to be able to vote. And if they say we can't attend polling booths or anything like that, then will they bring in electronic voting? And if they do, so that we can have a vote, how can we trust that electronic vote isn't going to be rigged? I think the whole democratic process is up for grabs at the moment. I think it needs to be completely revamped. I mean, already you've got the Victorian Parliament mandating that all parliamentarians are jabbed. So that means anyone who thinks the way that those of us who haven't had the jab are concerned won't be able to go in and sit in Parliament. So how can we be represented by people who we may want to be there? The whole thing is being rigged, and everybody's happy to have it happen. I mean, well, not everybody, but it seems like a majority of Australians are just happy to have this done. And who cares about the freedoms that we had 2 years ago that our kids will never see? It's like we're not even thinking past the nose in our faces, because, we might catch a disease we have a 99.9% chance of surviving.
Yeah.
I mean, for goodness sake. I'm still getting my head around the fact that if you've been jabbed and I haven't, then I have to be jabbed to protect you. I mean, why have the vaccine at all? If you're not going to be protected from me, well, then why have it?
Exactly. It's the most ridiculous point that people make as well. It's like they completely forget how a vaccine is supposed to work. When you get vaccinated, you're protected.
Mm.
Oh, it's just this whole thing is so frustrating, and I've kind of disconnected from a lot of my friends because I feel like they're on the side of the narrative, like the narrative that is being shoved down their throats through mainstream media. It's just how are we gonna get out of this? I don't even like just thinking about it.
It's an easy way to get out of it. We just say no.
Yeah, just say
But not
no.
enough of us are saying no. I mean, if the whole world was awake to what's going on and they said no, then the global agenda wouldn't happen. But it's going to happen. The word of God tells us in the book of Revelation that what's coming is coming, and there's not much we're going to be able to do to stop it. You know, so we have to start building our relationships on more solid foundations. We have to have relationships of meaning. We have to have faith relationships that actually bring joy into our life. I mean, my faith relationship is strong enough for me that I'm not afraid of dying. I have no fear of dying. I have no fear. I believe I was created by someone who loves me. My life has a purpose, and when I die, I'm going to go to heaven. So I don't have any fear. I'm just part of a global process, a heavenly process. And as long as I stay true to that, then I have no fear. But people are living in fear now because they don't have faith in anything. They're all about self. You know, it's your life is measured by this thing and how successful you are and the selfies that you take. And a lot of people have taken this jab early so they can get back to smashed avo on toast and cappuccino by the river. I mean, they've given up everything for just something that's so flippant. I mean, you've only got to see the mentality of people when so-called Freedom Day happened in New South Wales. The minute the clock struck 12, there were thousands of people queuing up to get into the casino and Kmart. I mean, what's that about? What sort of a nation is it that where we fight harder for toilet paper than we do for our human rights? I mean, we've totally lost the plot.
Yeah, really.
I'm devastated with Australians at the moment. I just cannot comprehend the mentality of people in this country anymore. But it doesn't mean I'm giving up hope, because there are enough people out there who want to resurrect this that I believe that we can do it. But we're not going to do it by adversarial actions or being violent. We're going to do it by loving and expressing compassion. You know, the best way to destroy your enemy, Rosita, is to make him your friend. And we need to keep loving the people who are going to hate us. And in that, we show them that grace and evil can't live in the same room, and evil's always the first to leave. We need to keep expressing ourselves with compassion, even to those who hate us. And that's what Jesus said. He said, always turn the other cheek, you know. If a man asks you for one loaf of bread, give him two. And so that's the sort of energy that we have to inject into our lives now and into our community, where that we should care about. We should really care about detainees. We should really care about our First Nations people. We should really care about that little Sri Lankan family that have been pushed from pillar to post for the last 4 years, who should be back home in Billawheeler where they're loved and safe, you know. And yet we live in a country that screws up its nose and says that, you know, bureaucratically those people don't have a right to be here. That's garbage. I mean, if that's what we stand for in Australia, then we really need a good flushing out.
We definitely do. It's just where do you see the country in 5 years' time? How do you see everything playing out?
I think we're going to go from one disaster to another. And I mean, this world is changing exponentially. We're struggling to keep up with the changes happening now. And unless we come to terms with the fact that we're in for one pretty dark ride and start getting together as a community, as much as I'd like to inject hope into this conversation, it's hard to see it the way we are. But in actual fact, the people who are being most demonised in this country at the moment are those who they're calling anti-vaxxers. I call them freedom fighters.
Yep.
They're the ones who are out there fighting for the rights of the people who have been vaccinated for their future. And we're being classified as the enemy. And that's going to keep going. But, the more we stick together, the more we join together in communities, that we connect with one another. I mean, you must have a circle of friends around you can connect with that believe like you do. And because there's millions of us. We need to connect in that way and express compassion and faith and trust in each other in a way that shows us as an example to those who are struggling. Because there are a lot of people who've been double vaccinated who don't feel any animosity towards us. In fact, the rally I was at on the Tweed Coast border a couple of weeks ago, a lot of the people there have been double vaxxed, and they were there fighting for freedom too. So there's a lot of people who may not agree with the fact that you're not being vaccinated, but they do agree with your right to freedom, and they want to defend that, and they want it for themselves. So it's only I like to call them the ignorant minority of people on the other side who are making comments like that, because they don't seem to have the rationality to look at what's going on and work out for themselves what informed consent actually means and how they didn't get it when they gave permission to be vaccinated. A lot of people did it for good reasons. Like, a lot of people have done it for loyalty to their country. And some of them really believe that. Others are using that as an excuse to just cover up the fact that they're just sick and tired of being locked down and they just want to get out and have a life again. There are some people, especially in churches, who are saying that, that we should be vaccinated out of love for our neighbour and our family so that we don't jeopardise them. So they're doing it out of love, they say, but on the same token, they're not expressing love for the people who aren't being vaccinated. So their love is conditional, and conditional love is not love at all. Conditional love is bribery. So there's a whole lot of skewed motives behind all this that most people don't even get to look at. But for me, they're very clear to see, because I've loved studying human nature. I've made a hobby out of that for years, and I love to see how people work and what drives their thoughts. And to me, it's really clear that we're going down a pathway that we need some strong leadership to correct. We need the older people to stand up and say, you're doing it wrong. We need the First Nations people to stand up with a bigger voice and say, you're doing this all wrong. Otherwise, we're just doomed to more of the same. And the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And until we realise that as a nation we're insane, we're going to keep falling into these holes.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to amplify the voices of reason, such as yourself and First Nations people. That's why I really want your message out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that another aspect to why a lot of people are following along with the anti-vaccine narrative, with the neo-Nazi label, free dumb, as in D-U-M-B, narrative, is because they're just disconnected from the people that chose not to get this vaccine and the way that they're suffering. So, as I understand it, you speak to thousands of people every day, hundreds or thousands of people every day. Did you want to kind of share some of their stories so that people would understand their struggles a bit more?
Yeah, I can. And in fact, if you give me a minute, can I leave the camera for a minute? I'll read you something.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Now. Okay. So.
Yeah, so we were talking about, some of I'm getting thousands of messages every day. And this one I got a couple of days ago that really touched my heart. And I'm talking to people who are on the edge of suicide, who are in very grave mental health danger. But this one came from a lovely lady. She said, today I'm feeling sad. Today I am a second-class citizen in Australia. I volunteered with one of Australia's most well-known mental health organisations for 15 years to help those with mental health issues. Spoken at numerous organisations on mental health for free, ran support groups for women with postnatal depression and anxiety, and visited struggling new mums at their homes for free. Volunteered my time with community groups for free. Volunteered for years at a local primary school where I would sit and read with the kids that struggle with reading and writing for free. Taking kids off the street into my home until they were back on their feet again or able to go back home for free. Counsel people on my Facebook page, over 20,000 of them, for free. Given away countless copies of my mental health book for free. Wrote a column, a Q&A for a local newspaper to help those with mental issues for free. But today I am a second-class citizen. I have paid taxes for my entire adult life. I've donated on a monthly basis to the Cancer Council for over 20 years. I've sacrificed and lost just like you. I haven't seen my family and friends for months. I watched my child's high school education go down the drain. I watched my partner lose work for 18 months, and I watched my lifelong dream of becoming a flight attendant disappear. I sacrificed and stayed home just like you. I wore a mask even though I had an exemption just to keep everyone else happy. But today, I'm sad to say I am a second-class citizen. I've always been kind to everyone regardless. I've never judged anyone for anything and accepted people regardless of who they are. I've always been there and available for anyone who needs help. But today I am a second-class citizen. Now, if any Australians are listening to this, and I think the people I'm aiming this comment at won't be because they're not interested. If that sits well with you, then you need to be ashamed of yourself.
You definitely do. You definitely do. It's just, if that story doesn't reach anybody, oh my God, I can't even, like, we have a far bigger problem than just vaxxed versus unvaxxed.
We do. We really do. We need to wake up to ourselves. We need to get our priorities sorted out, and we need to get ourselves sorted out very quickly.
Yeah, and
because people like this are dying at their own hand every day, every single day. And they're physically healthy, but they're mentally destroyed by the rest of Australia, by the mainstream narrative, and by governments who've completely lost the plot.
especially Dictator Dan.
Especially Dictator Dan, yeah. I mean, he's the man who refused when he was health minister, and he brought in abortion law reform to fourth trimester. In other words, you could abort a fetus, a baby, after it was born. He was asked by doctors, please, can you amend the bill so that we can sedate the fetus before we terminate it, because we know they feel pain and stress. And he said, no, you can't. That's Daniel Andrews. He's a man of despicable character. There's no two ways about it. He's Australia's answer to dare I say, Mussolini or Adolf Hitler. I mean, given the opportunity, he would go that far. He's definitely right in the mold of a communist dictator.
Oh, for sure. That's the Labour Party.
Yeah, well, that's what they're doing. So, politics in this country needs to change, and we need to get rid of politicians and put citizens in there.
For sure. I think another thing that we need to educate people on is the fact that Liberal and Labour, Greens and Nationals, they're all kind of they're all on the same team. They're all
they are
the same agenda. It's just
they all eat at the same table.
Yeah. I tell my friends this and they say, oh, well, there's no way that the two-party system will ever come undone. And it's just,
it will. It's bringing itself undone. I mean, I had a conversation with some pretty powerful people today who are mounting a challenge that I think the next election is going to be very, very interesting in this country. And I think that's March or April. We've got to wait till then, sadly. But, there's one party in particular that will mount 151 candidates against the government, against the main parties. And they have more members in their one party than all the other parties combined. I think nearly 80,000 people have joined up. And I'm trying not to promote any one political party over another. But I do have faith that there may well be a minority party-led government in the next election if things keep going the way they are. I think a lot of people are going to wake up eventually.
I mean, I really hope so, but it's just, I think the party you're talking about is United Australia Party. And the only comments that my friends have ever made about United Australia Party is, oh, Clive Palmer is terrible. And they say all these things about these politicians / billionaire that it's just, it's the mainstream narrative. The mainstream narrative wants you to hate these people for a reason.
Yeah, they do.
When you actually look at what these people say, like especially Craig Kelly, he's working tirelessly for our freedoms. They're not as bad as the mainstream narrative says. And I don't
look. Today I did interviews with Craig Kelly and I did one with Monica Smith. That was awesome. She's a lady with a lot of integrity and courage and strength, and she's joined up with United Australia Party now. The first time I've ever spoken to Craig Kelly was today in this interview that we did together with a few other people. And we talked about the spirit of Australia, and at the end I sang that song, we are one and we are many. And he cried, and that was really heartening to see that, because we want politicians with that kind of passion for this country, that feel that depth of feeling for this country that we're losing at a rapid rate. I was very impressed with him today, very impressed indeed. And yet mainstream media make him out to be a crackpot. But, that's another story. I mean, mainstream media, you look at these talking heads on the breakfast shows and all that sort of stuff and current affairs programs, they're saying what the organisation's telling them to say, but I wouldn't be surprised if many of them haven't been jabbed and probably never will be. I would think there's a lot of anti-vaxxer, if you like to use that term, and I hate it, talking heads who will never get jabbed, but they're geeing everybody else up to do it. And I think that's reprehensible too.
For sure. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts on Clive Palmer? Because what I've seen of him is he's not as bad as people say, but there's a lot of controversy around the businesses that he's failed or something like that.
Well, there's a lot of people in northern Queensland who hate him because his nickel mine failed and he left a lot of people destitute. And you know what? I'm a different man to the one I was 15 years ago, Rosita. And what I'm hearing about him at the moment is that he is a very deep patriot for Australia. He wants something better for Australia, but is he worth giving the benefit of the doubt? I reckon everybody's worth the benefit of the doubt, but he's been through a lot too, and he may well have changed. But the thing is, he's funding Craig Kelly and who Craig Kelly's putting up. Craig Kelly's actually the leader, and there may be a lot of merit in that. Well, you've only got to look at Clive Palmer and look at Scott Morrison. I mean, Scott Morrison has no backbone. He is, I think he's rather deceitful in that he pretends everything's great and gets everyone else to do his dirty work for him. Would Clive Palmer be any worse than having Scott Morrison in leadership? Clive Palmer wouldn't be Prime Minister anyway because, if his party won, it would be Craig Kelly. So you've got to look at who's there. And what about the opposition, the Labor opposition, Anthony Albanese and his team? I mean, if they had been in power now, would it be any different? No. I mean, it doesn't matter who wins out of Labor and Liberal, nothing ever changes, and nothing ever will change until the people say we want something different.
Yeah. And obviously changing like the political sphere is one way of change, but on a much bigger scale, I think that we have to cut ties with foreign affairs as well, like the UN and the CCP, all of these horrible like foreign affairs. It's just, how are we going to do it? And that's something I haven't wrapped my head around. Can we even do that?
Well, there's an organisation called the World Economic Forum that's leading the charge to have that as one world government. So those entities don't exist anymore. And, I even look at the United States of America now and wonder where they really sit. I mean, if this virus was manufactured, then it was a cooperative venture between the United Kingdom, the USA, and China. So once again, they're all eating at the same table. I mean, it's called an Hegelian dialectic, where people look like they're at odds, but they're actually pretending to be at odds to create chaos out of which they create an order. So there's a lot involved in that kind of politicking, and I think that's been going on for centuries. I think there's been, I think they're all eating at the same table, to be honest with you, and I don't think it makes a lot of difference at the end of the day. We're just being used as the test tube at the moment in Australia because of our isolated continent, and we're not an overly populated nation. We're only 25 million, and I think that we're being used as like a lab experiment for the New World Order. And people say, "Oh, he's talking about the New World Order. He'll put a tin hat on in a minute." But you only have to look at if you Google "Build Back Better," that phrase "Build Back Better," and see how many of the world leaders have used that phrase in the last 12 months. Every one of them. Every single one of them have used that same script, "Build Back Better." Where does "Build Back Better" come from? The World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab. And who is Klaus Schwab? He's a man with some very evil and dark connections. He's a very ugly individual in every sense of the word. And so that's the world we're living in now. So that's why we have to rely more and more on each other and less on these global influences as much as we can.
Yeah. I think that the main way to get there is to just spread awareness of what's going on and just get people to realize that the New World Order is not a crazy conspiracy theory. And you're probably better off at explaining it than I can, because it's all in here, but I can't say it out loud. So, Graham, what is Build Back Better? What is the Great Reset?
Well, the Great Reset is, you can see the glossy advertisement for it if you go to the World Economic Forum website. There's a beautiful TV commercial there. You will own nothing. You will rent everything. Everybody on the planet will be on the same salary. You will get paid for doing nothing. Your food will be delivered to you by drone. And you won't own anything. You will rent everything that you use, and you'll be happy. And there's a smiling face of this young guy looking really happy. We're looking at a one world currency. We're looking at a one world religion. We're looking at a one world government. And it'll be the 99% of the population that are left alive being controlled by the 1% with all the money. And they won't be renting anything. They'll be owning everything. And we're going to go right back to the Dark Ages. And this is the New World Order. And it's been talked about for the last 30 years, 40 years. And it's there. Anyone who studies history will see references to the New World Order in so much of their research. I mean, George Bush Sr. talked about the New World Order. Kerry Chant even talked about the New World Order. Brad Hazard talked about the New World Order. You've got to listen to speeches by Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada. He's all for the New World Order, as is Biden, and as is that clown that runs the UK, Boris Johnson. The world is being run by cartoon characters. They're all puppets. And the New World Order is there for anyone to see. You don't have to go into the dark bowels of the underground internet to see it. It's just there. Just Google World Economic Forum, Google New World Order, Google Build Back Better.
Yeah.
And that's an agenda that's set for 2030. And the people who are running around now saying, oh, it's great, we're free now. Well, this time next year it will be climate change without a doubt, because they're already linking the current pandemic to climate change, and people have wondered how that could be. But the climate change economy is there's a thing called a do economy, and do economy is connected to a black MasterCard. MasterCard Corporation are involved in this, and there's a company that's made an app called Do Black. And basically what the do economy is you have your money in the bank, but you also get credited so many carbon credits every month. So you might, let's say you get, for example, 2,000 carbon credits a month. You will use your black MasterCard, the Do Black card, to buy everything. Now, when you purchase something, everything you purchase has a carbon value that's deducted from your carbon credit. Excuse me. So, for example, if you decide to go for a driving holiday up to Cairns and you buy fuel with your black Do card, you get up to Cairns and you've used all your carbon credits and you're only halfway through the month, then you're locked down wherever it is you are and you can't travel again or spend anything or buy anything, because the credit card won't let you use your money because everything you buy has a carbon deficit. So carbon will be the new currency. And if you don't have enough to go anywhere, then people are going to be locked down until they get their carbon credits restored at the first of every month. Now, that's going to affect all these people who are now running around high-fiving saying, hey, I took it for the team and we're all going back to normal. If they think this is tough, then I suspect those of us who are about to go into the leper colony because we haven't been vaccinated will be well used to what they're going to be facing in a year or so.
This is just
That's
so
that's the New
psychopaths.
World Order.
Yeah, psychopaths with too much money and power.
Yeah. Yeah. And we allow it to happen, and we consume, and we buy lots of fashion online that we only wear once, and then it ends up in a landfill in Ghana in Africa somewhere, or pollutes the sea. We have an island, a continent-sized island of plastic floating around in the Pacific Ocean that no one's dealing with, and we're worried about the climate, as in the weather. And we're not dealing with the big issues that are killing our oceans and stuff like that. I mean, we're producing trashy garments that are worn once from chemically based fabrics that are just clogging up everything in our system, and we overconsume. And governments wanting us to spend more and more and more to keep the economies going.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we need to buy stuff that we can repair if it breaks. We need to stop having to, if once upon a time you bought a toaster, if it broke, you took it and got it repaired, or you fixed it yourself. Now you just throw it away and get a new one. We can't keep living like that. And but most of all, we can't keep living without love and compassion. And that's what and time, we're time poor, we're compassion poor, and we're love poor. And that's why I just love my faith. My faith really sustains me, and it gives me hope. And I'm trying to get as many people to see that as they can, because I believe there's a train coming, and a lot of people are going to be asleep on the tracks.
Yeah. I'm a bit overwhelmed about what you said about next year's drama that we have to deal with.
Yeah, they're going to keep coming. We've just got to expect that, and that's all been prophesied in the Bible. It's all been laid out for all to see. So and we can put our heads in the sand and live in denial, or we can actually realise that there's a high likelihood that these things are going to happen and start voting with our feet and with our wallets. And we've got to start saying no while we've still got a democratic right to do so. But until we recognise that that democratic right's soon going to be taken away from us, it'll be too late to say no when they shut the door on us. So we have to actually start speaking out loud now. And they're trying it desperately to stop people from demonstrating or gathering in groups, and censorship, social media. I'm typing stuff for a post on Facebook and it's being deleted while I'm typing it. I haven't even posted it. I mean, this is just crazy. We don't have freedom of speech. We're censored into oblivion. We're fact-checked into oblivion. And we're being ripped off blind as human beings, and we're not even awake to it. A lot of us are.
Do you kind of feel like maybe this is what, in some dark way, maybe this is something that we just kind of deserve?
Well, yeah, I do. You know what, Rosita, if everybody on the planet looked after the person on their right, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The truth is, the battle between good and evil thrives when men of goodwill do nothing. And the driving force of the evil side of the battle is sin and the unspeakable things that people do to each other and themselves. And a great many of us have fallen in that trap. And as such, we've sold our souls to the devil, basically. And that doesn't mean that we're perpetually stuck there. We can make a change. But it involves us developing our character, and character development is the work of a lifetime. And we have to recognise that there are things that we need to come clean about. That's why I speak openly about my porn addiction. I wear my heart on my sleeve because I don't want to have any secrets in my life. And sometimes people say it's embarrassing when you share that stuff, but believe me, when I share that stuff, people who had my addiction have them permission to tell me about their stuff. And when we give each other permission to tell the truth about who we are, that's how we grow.
Yeah.
But we've all got a mask on. And if you've got anything hidden in your past, that's what will be used. That'll be a foothold that'll be used by evil to control you. When you're an addict, you become a very good liar, and as such, you're constantly on alert that you're not going to let the cat out of the bag. Where I decided years ago that I needed to be free of that, so I just came out and told the world, basically. And I've made a lot of videos and talked about that to thousands of people, and thousands of people around the world know that I had a dark past, but I'm not in that past anymore. I'm free of that now, and I'm very comfortable with where I'm at. So we do, if we don't address the issues, the whole world needs to be in recovery, in 12-step recovery. I mean, we need to go through a process to get our house in order and get cleaned up.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, we've got to own our dirt before we can give it to anybody. None of us own our dirt. We're happy to hand our dirt over to everybody else, but we have to own it and then do something about it, and until we do that, we're going to be stuck on this roller coaster ride that's up and down, and we're all going to be stressed, and we're all vulnerable to fear. And fear, the acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real. And that's never been more evident than it is today.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting how whenever people turn towards something more spiritual, they actually do start recovering a bit. Like my mom has been for the last couple of years, and she has been openly talking about her wounds and her dark past. And I always openly talk about my own darkness as well. Like I've had suicidal thoughts for the last, on and off for the last 10 years, and I self-harm. I don't really know if I want to go into why I self-harm, because it's just I feel like it's something that a lot of people don't really understand. But my
I
God,
get it.
when I self-harm, it's just the people that have to deal with that, they don't get it. They don't understand the severity of it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go into why I self-harm. um, uh, okay, so I'm a very passionate animal-loving vegan, and it really it tears me apart that nobody really cares about animals. um, so yeah, just living in a world where I'm about to cry.
That's okay. It's only you and me, right?
And the people I'm going to share this with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I do vegan activism, like just online for now. I follow a lot of vegan pages, and I see their suffering. I see the way that they're killed, and it's just heartbreaking. So, and then I see, people just saying, "Oh, it's my own personal choice," or that they don't care. It's just it's really upsetting. So yeah, that's why I've self-harmed before. Yeah, that's how.
Most people self-harm because it's the only pain that they can control.
Yeah, I self-harm because I feel like I'm failing to speak up for the animals, and
You're punishing yourself.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, I've got 2 dogs sitting beside me and a Joey kangaroo that's hopping around the house somewhere, who we rescued from a roadside kill. He was this big when we got him. He had no hair on his body, and now he's this high, and he rules the roost. So yeah, I'm like you. I used to eat meat, and I've gone to a plant-based diet now, and living on a little farm like we do, I had to do something the other day, which is really hard. We've got some sheep to keep the grass down, and we've got a ram, and he was getting old, and he was ill, and the only humane thing to do was to shoot him, and it was very hard to do, and I felt terrible. So yeah, I get you, and self-harming is something that a lot of people do because it seems to be the only way to control the pain that you feel and the failure that you feel. And it's kind of like we punish ourselves. I mean, a lot of my addiction was about punishing myself, and the more you punish yourself, the lower you feel and the more you need to do it because it's a self-defeating spiral.
Yeah.
So do you feel any better having talked about it?
I mean, I don't know right now. I'm even at this moment, I'm contemplating, do I even want to post this particular part out? But I think that I will keep it in because I feel like
How many people watch this?
well, I have a quite a small channel, but I do get a couple of I don't get that many views, but I'm trying.
What if somebody who actually watched this heard what you just said, and it touched their heart in a way that helped them?
Yeah, that's true. Or they can go the other route and make fun of me and yeah.
No, what other people think about us is none of our business. But, I've been ridiculed a lot for some of the things I've said, but I've also had messages from lots of emails from people, like one guy in Arizona who I got warned was on Facebook talking about wanting to kill himself. And somebody said, can you come on Facebook and go to this guy? And I spent a couple of hours chatting to him on Facebook and worked with him for a few days after that. And he disappeared for a while and he went into rehab. I didn't know it. When he came out, he'd converted his life to Christianity. His whole life had turned around. And he said, if you hadn't spoken to me that night, I would have killed myself. So I'll take 10,000 ridicules for every one of those. So if people have got an issue with that, then they've got a problem, not you.
Yeah, that's true.
So I wouldn't, I'd leave it in there if I were you. You never know, because God never wastes a hurt, Rosita.
Yeah, I'll leave it in there because I've kind of like managed to tune out the trolls that do come onto my page.
Yeah.
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 It kind of feels like, I don't know, I always judge myself on what I've done and why I've self-harmed, because I feel like I am being a bit dramatic. I don't know. I probably am being a bit too intense with the whole vegan activism thing. It really does get to me. Yeah. Okay.
Well, these things all have seasons, and we mellow. And the one thing I can tell you after 68 years is that you mellow. You go through these intensities in your life, and then everything seems to level out, and something else comes along, and it just keeps developing your character. And if you were to stand back and look at your life as a tapestry on the wall, you'd stand back at a distance and look at it and say, wow, that's really beautiful. And there'd be all these dark threads through this picture. And the dark threads represent the things that cause you pain and suffering and hardship. But if you went around behind the tapestry hanging on the wall and pulled out all the dark threads and looked at it again, it wouldn't look anywhere near as good, and it would probably collapse.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? It's like the dark things in our life help make the pretty picture that we end up creating by living life.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
And honestly, like, when I think of where I wanted to go before this whole scamdemic began, like, I was ready to start traveling around and just enjoying my life after 10 years of just kind of not doing what I actually wanted to do with my life. And then now that I'm just seeing that there's an agenda and there's something that makes me feel disempowered, the suicidal thoughts are coming back. And just today, like, after that court ruling, I felt the same, like I felt like we don't have a Bill of Rights, so there has to be a vaccine mandate. It's really upsetting that all of my goals in life have been put to hold right now, when that's all I wanted to do. And I don't know when that's coming back, or if that's coming back. It feels hopeless sometimes.
Yeah. Well, you're one of many millions of people in Australia that feel the same way. In fact, around the world. I wake up every morning and I feel like a fog rolls over me, and then I just pray about it and I hand all that to God, and the fog clears and I start seeing, well, I've got to face these messages that I'm getting again, and listening to other people's pain and seeing in front of me what their agony is, like that letter that I read to you. And and I just keep going day by day. And my wife's a great strength, and she keeps going day by day, and that's all we can do. You know, there's still a lot of, there's a serenity prayer, and it goes, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. No use worrying about it. It's wretched, and we've just got to accept that. Trusting that you, God, will make all things right if I just surrender to your will, so that I can be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next, in Jesus' name, amen. And that's the recovery prayer, which we use in our recovery, that's been in the 12-step movement since the 1930s. And a lot of people who don't even believe in God get a lot of comfort out of that prayer, because it actually speaks a lot of truth. You know, we should be enjoying every moment that we get. If the sun's shining, you may not be able to travel, but if you can get out and just stand in the sun and look up instead of looking down all the time. Most of us are walking around looking at the ground. We've lost our spirit. And if we can get back to that and just enjoy every single moment, this moment now is about to be spent. And the one that's coming, we don't know what that is, and what's already gone is gone. And so we have to focus on those things that we've been gifted in life that still make life a pleasure to live in, despite everything that's going on. I mean, you still have family, you have friends. Yeah, the future looks in doubt in many ways, but that can also be changed in your own sphere of influence. So you're reaching out to people now, and that's an important thing that you do. So you've got to enjoy those things and see them as opportunities.
Yeah, honestly, I think that when Gladys was in charge, I was a bit darker, but now that Dom has come in and kind of eased things up a little bit, I've finally come out of my shell, and I've reached out to people like yourself and other people to do podcasts. So I feel like I am getting better, and I feel like things can get better as well. But I want to contribute to it somehow. So that's why.
You are.
Yeah.
You are.
Are
Just
you?
be you.
Yeah.
Just be you, and just have that be okay. You don't have to self-harm. We talk to a lot of people who do that, and all you have to do is accept that in God's eyes you're lovable, you're capable, you're adorable, you're teachable, you're valuable. All the ables are what we are. We're inherently being designed to be that way. But the dark side wants us to see the less. So you're useless, hopeless, reckless. So I choose to live in the ables and not the lessers in life.
I think I need to practice that a bit more.
You do. We all do. We all do. In these dark times, we need to practice it even more.
Yeah, I mean, I sit and listen to meditation music every day, but I feel like I need to actually pray a bit more instead of just trying to get into a more relaxed state. I need to try to get into a more peaceful state, because I haven't been.
Yeah. Well, prayer is a wonderful thing, and the God I pray to is the greatest promise keeper in the universe. He always keeps his promises, never lets me down. He doesn't often give me what I want, but he always gives me what I need.
Yep.
And what I need is more important than what I want. So, and what I really need now is sleep. I've got another big day tomorrow, and I'm going to have to cut this off because it's nearly 1 o'clock.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Did you want to just, as we finish this off, do you want to sing a song? That's your
Do I
outro.
want to? Um,
Or you're not
yeah.
in the mood.
Okay. We are one, and we are many, and from all the lands on earth we come. We share a dream and sing with one voice. I am, you are, we are Australian. That'll do.
Beautiful.
Look
Thank
at
you
my hair. Look,
so
I'm just, I'm just so tired. Yeah. God bless you,
much.
and God keep you, and keep loving your animals, and keep loving yourself the way God loves you, and you'll soon realise in prayer that you don't need to self-harm, because He numbered every hair on your head. He designed you. He had a great plan for your future, and He has a plan for you to prosper and be happy. And that's the God I love. He's the most beautiful, wonderful Father that anyone could ever have. And because we're all from Him, that makes you my sister.
That makes you my brother.
That's right. And I'm pretty happy about that.
Me too.
Okay, sweetie. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you so much.
Sleep well. Are you gonna get some sleep now, or are you gonna stay up all night?
I think I'm gonna post this out. So I'm gonna work a bit more.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
get some rest, and don't let the darkness of this world subdue you. You've got a brightness about you, and you need to live into that.
Thank you. So do you.
Thank you. All right, sweetie, I'll leave you to it.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.